You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong, all on Georgia Radio Network.
Welcome to episode 48 of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. The beautiful and talented Matt Lowe is on vacation. With me, as always, or again, is Jessica Salaji. If I can actually, I messed up your first name like an idiot.
It's okay. It's okay. No matter whatever you call me, I can still say I've been called worse by better. So
definitely by better. Yeah. So I lied to you last week.
What was that? You told me you were gonna do me proud.
Yeah, we were gonna do you proud, and then that happened.
Well, it's like I always said. We knew we were in trouble when Jonathan was the principal in the room, when it was me, Matt, and Jonathan, and now that Jonathan's gone, I'm not even the next best thing. So I think you guys get a pass.
Well, it really was. We were flying without air traffic control.
You never landed the plane?
We never landed the damn plane. We just, and it really, non sequitur to non sequitur to non sequitur. I don't even know how we got places. Like, we started on, A, and ended up on subsection Z41.
I love it. Well,
so starting things off, the Ninth Circus has issued
not a mess up.
Yeah, not a mess up. That wasn't a slur. Has issued a ruling on guns. And this one's interesting. This one is very interesting. Anybody who has ever had someone from out of the country, and I've done this, as soon as they get here, they've heard about our culture, and they want to go shooting. They've heard about Americans and their guns, and there's actually a tourism thing in Hawaii where the Japanese come over and there's ranches set up for them to shoot guns. And Jessica, you kind of get into the nuts and bolts of this thing as far as when someone becomes a felon taking a visitor to go shoot.
Well, first, I didn't know that this was a thing, and people have been talking about it on social media. I happened to catch an article that was being shared, and people were arguing over citizen versus person, of course, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But so I did some research on this, and I had no idea. I mean, who would think that if you took someone to a gun range that you'd be committing a felony if they are from any country? And this one, of course, this has to do with someone who's from Mexico. So the narrative of a lot of the stories is focused more on how he got here and all these things, which I think is really irrelevant. I think, the court, what they said was, we're not sure whether the Second Amendment applies to lawful aliens in the first place, but even if it does, this law passes muster. It's sufficiently tailored to the government's crime control interests, since unlawful aliens are subject to removal, are often hard to trace, and have already shown they are unable or unwilling to conform their conduct to the laws of this country. So, in this court ruling, which is just wild to me, I don't know whether if I agree with the premise of this or not, but with the law, but with the ruling, they said that they're hard to trace. So if you're off the grid, you don't have a complete Second Amendment right. If they're subject to removal, I mean, we can't be deported, but we can be placed in prison or anything else. We're all subject to something. So that's a reason to have crime control, quote. And then the worst one of all is that they are unable or unwilling to conform their conduct to the laws of this country. Well, we all break laws. So without due process, they're already saying that you don't have a Second Amendment right. The whole premise of the ruling is totally outrageous.
Well, here's the thing. if you were to take that ruling and remove Second Amendment and then put in Fourth, Fifth, the ACLU would be losing their minds if they said that because you're an illegal alien that you no longer have any protections against search and seizure. You no longer have Miranda rights. You no longer have the right to remain silent.
Well, and you know that if Republicans, or if this hadn't had to do with illegal immigration, then Republicans wouldn't be cheering for it. But they're fogging their Second Amendment protection judgment with illegal immigration.
And the Reason article that you sent me on this one is very interesting with the way it works. And correct me if I'm wrong. And I read this thing, and I actually read it out loud to myself because the ins and outs of things, that the way things work are very strange. If someone is here on a long-term immigrant visa, green card holder, legal, you can take them to a gun range. They can walk to a gun range. I've got a very good friend of mine who is a green card holder, owns several restaurants, and actually owns NFA items, which are National Firearms Act items. He owns legal pre-1986 machine guns. Totally cool. If they're here on a student visa, not cool. So if you've got somebody who's here to go to college, you are, even as the American, you can be prosecuted as an accomplice, as a conspirator, for taking a person on a student visa to the range. Now, this does not apply to countries that do not require visas to come here, such as Canada, most of the Western European countries, and the Asian democracies. So I guess it's legal for the Japanese to do it, but illegal for the Chinese to do it.
But based on what you just said, it's not even equally applied, because a green card holder is not a citizen. And if the basis is citizens, if that's the argument that we're making,
oh, sure.
They're not even applying this to everyone the same.
Right. We've created different, and there already are different categories of alien. You've got, illegal. You've got student visa. You've got tourist visa. You've got no visa required. But the fact is, we don't apply laws separately to them based on their immigration status. So we don't go kicking in the doors of illegal immigrants and search everything they have, jackboot style, just because they're immigrants, because we have a standard protection that we say are human rights. And that's what the Bill of Rights applies to, is human rights. Now, what's funny in here is the argument that if you have a hunting license, it does not apply to you.
Which is infuriating if nothing else has even happened.
Well, here's the interesting thing. The idea is, and people like Matt Lowe travel to go hunt. So you can go to Mexico and go dove hunting, or you can go to Argentina and go hunt whatever. And there's an exemption for you carrying a firearm in their country. And the idea is you're actively on a hunt. So you may go to a ranch in Montana and you are from the UK, and they hand you a rifle that's loaned to them so you can possess it. So theoretically, if you go and you pay to get a hunting license, you can then go to the range regardless of your immigration status. Now, here's the thing that the article comes up with that I find so infuriating is the judge or the court may throw that out if all you do is use the hunting license as a loophole, saying that's not in the original intent of the law. Well, how about the framers' intent? Because there's no way Jefferson was going, no. We don't want to apply this to everyone. Not everyone should be able to bear arms. Not everyone should be secure in their belongings from the government. We only want to apply this to certain people.
I think this is going to the Supreme Court for sure, because they've already ruled back in 2008 that rights, and they were talking about the Second Amendment when they ruled this, that rights apply to individuals, not citizens, not legal residents, not license holders, individuals.
Right. The Bill of Rights is not a enumeration of the rights of individuals or their people. It is a governor of a restraint on government. Is that the government can't establish a religion. A government cannot take your weapons from you. A government cannot forcibly house troops in your house. The government cannot rifle through your belongings and your papers.
Well, I think that the Ninth Circuit, which is traditionally like ridiculously liberal, I think, which is why, conservatives, like I said, they're talking about illegal immigration and what a win this is. I think they showed their colors in their hand when they said, I think the quote was, assuming that unlawful aliens do hold some degree of Second Amendment rights, those rights are not unlimited. Well, first of all, they are. And second of all, you're saying that specifically you don't believe that Second Amendment rights are unlimited per the Constitution. So you're telling everyone that this is about the Second Amendment and not about rights or illegal immigrants having guns or anything else other than the Second Amendment.
Shall not be infringed.
Shall not.
Doesn't say citizen. Doesn't say resident. Says shall not be infringed. And it's and I hate even saying things like it's an interesting conversation to have, because no, it's not. It's sickening. Because it's sickening that there's rogue courts out there that come up with these rulings. Is it going to the Supreme Court? Probably. The problem is when these cases come up, it's always in the worst possible way. It's the guy who's an illegal immigrant who hurt somebody, broke a bunch of other laws, and by the way, had a revolver. Well,
this one though, and I agree with you, like every story we hear about people here illegally is the ones committing crimes. And I mean, I don't want to get into the illegal immigration debate because that could be an entire episode and then some. But this guy was here illegally, but he was trying to sell a stolen bike. Like, he wasn't a violent criminal. He wasn't a murderer or a rapist or something. I mean, I don't know. I understand that being here is a crime, but they sentenced him to prison, 2 years and 3 months in prison for being an illegal immigrant in possession of a crime.
Yeah,
I mean, a gun,
of a firearm. Right. Yeah, and again, everybody who's beating their chest going, well, forget them border jumpers. This applies to us. And you can't, under the ostrich doctrine, you can't just say, I didn't know he couldn't possess a firearm. It's should you have known. If someone says, hey, I'm here on a tourist visa and I want to go shoot some guns, you're like, hey, come with me. It applies to you. So right. You may be the person getting to serve 2 years and whatever months in the federal pen for doing nothing more than being an accommodating host and taking somebody to do something that is, I won't say uniquely American, but
close enough
to it's what's. The people around the world who don't have a Second Amendment get here and they expect to see John Wayne, and they expect to see guns at every corner and say, hey, well, I'll take you over to the gun club. Let's go shoot some guns. That makes me the criminal.
Right.
So now that we've solved that.
Right.
So Johnny Isakson is not happy with the government shutdown. He thinks it may interfere with the Super Bowl.
I saw this headline and it's so selfish. I mean, I get where he's coming from. Like, I understand the logic in it, but we just saw where the FBI, who hasn't been paid in a couple weeks, arrested a man who was plotting to he had a plot to attack the White House and DC. And after a year-long investigation, they continued it through the shutdown without being paid in the interest of national security and arrested this guy. Like, I don't believe that people who have knowledge of threats are going to deliberately ignore those things because of a shutdown. I don't think that's in line with the oaths that they took. And so Isakson pretending that like we're all in danger because of the government shutdown and all these people coming to Atlanta for the Super Bowl, I was just like, this is the games these politicians play. Like, if people aren't outraged over it, you got to find an issue that's going to outrage them, and that's the Super Bowl. That's sports.
Well, if he said it's going to be a tremendous pain in the ass, I'm with you, John. It is. And look, the blue flu that's going around the TSA, I understand. If you are working at the TSA, they aren't exactly the highest paid federal employees in the world. They're just not, especially if you're at the lower end of it, if you're a new employee or whatever, and you probably don't do well missing paychecks, especially with the cost of childcare and everything else. I understand that, and I saw the pictures out of Hartsfield with the long line. I should say, as we record this, the government shutdown is in full effect.
Right.
Obviously, it is going to be a tremendous pain in the ass get in and out of Hartsfield and whatever airport that a person is coming from to come here and enjoy our hospitality. I am trying to find somewhere else to be. I'm going to go down to South Georgia and hang out with you. So it is, and I think you hit the nail on the head as being selfish. And this would be any senator from any state. If it was in Denver and a Colorado senator stood up and said the same thing, we'd be calling the same balls and strikes on it. Is he just doesn't want it reflecting on his state.
Right.
There's no additional threat. The Governor Kemp could easily call up the National Guard, do whatever he wants to do to secure that building.
Well, and I don't know if people have seen the quote. It wasn't. I guess it's not really. I don't have TV, so I don't know how widely this story is getting out there. But he's talking about the Super Bowl coming in a couple weeks, and he says the biggest tourism event in the world this year. What if the largest airport in the world, that's going to bring people to the largest football game in the world, goes out of business because the TSA strikes? Then you've just cost millions of dollars to the United States of America, my home city of Atlanta, and others. Well, that's your problem, Johnny. They're your employees. Well,
and you know what? God, and this goes back to your tribalism argument. It's his team that's sticking on the border wall. And look, I understand it. It was a campaign promise. It is a mandate that Trump voters came through with, and he's trying to deliver. And they're whatever. You know, I lived through, budget shortages in the 90s when I was in the Army and stuff like that. This is nothing new. And yes, there are people that are suffering, but that's not even his focus. It's not even his, he's not.
No, it's not his focus. It's popular to be outraged over this. I mean, got an email from David Perdue the same day that said, he wants to point out the hypocrisy of the Democrats. You could say the same thing about Republicans. They're both acting like children.
Yes, of course. And we're whatever. We're not going to get, again, we were talking about the illegal immigration thing. We could do an entire show on that. it is what it is. It is what's It's what's happening. And going and crying about it to the press is not fixing anything. How about instead of going to the inauguration, you put your butt back in Washington and you work on getting something done.
That's right.
And I'm sure it's a wonderful thing for him to go to the gubernatorial inauguration, but it says in the article he's back in the Senate a day late because he was at Kemp's inauguration. Go to work. I didn't go to the inauguration. You know why? I had to be at work.
Not to mention, I believe Johnny's getting paid during the shutdown.
He is. He did not pull a Crenshaw.
Right.
Dan Crenshaw said he's not going to take a salary while the government shut down. And Johnny could afford it.
Right.
That's Johnny can afford not to take a couple paychecks. He'll be just fine.
Right. Gosh.
I don't know. The TSA was never supposed to be the people checking your bag. That was supposed to be a stopgap while we got a regulatory agency. Not that I'm huge on regulatory agencies, and each airport was supposed to employ their own security, and then there would be some an agency that checked them for standards, just like the FAA goes and checks each airline, making sure that they're up to safety standards. They would have the same idea with airport security. It was never supposed to be this giant juggernaut of a government agency, and now we are suffering from that. One of my neighbors is a I didn't know this. I thought he worked for the federal government directly. He's a contractor, a security contractor. So when I pulled up to him and said, "Hey, Marty, are you important or not important?" He goes, "Well, what do you mean?" He said, "Are you working tomorrow?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm a contractor. I get paid. The company I work for may have to wait for their money, but my check's there the 1st to the 15th. I'll be fine."
What's really interesting about that is I have a friend whose husband is a contractor, and they like the actual companies, some of them aren't getting paid right now, and there is no stipulation, which I guess I support that because I wouldn't want them regulating private entities, but like let's say that company A contracts 200 employees and they're all laid off during a shutdown or furloughed or whatever you call it. If they back pay everyone, those contractors are not required to back pay the employees, if the contractors worked without pay through the shutdown, they're still not required. Like those companies aren't required to allocate the money to them, which I thought was really interesting.
If they've gone without pay, they have to pay them. You can't not pay your employees.
You would think that would be a Department of Labor thing, but like it's happened before with this company in Georgia. I won't say where, but they haven't paid their employees from the shutdown.
Well, you can sue for lost wages. There's a lot of stuff as an employer. And now, if you just fold up or whatever, you can't get blood from a stone. But I don't know. If they're technically contractors, I don't know. I don't know where you go from it. You can't not pay your contracts.
Sure, but they can
they can make it as hard as possible to get paid.
Those contractors, though, I don't know. I'm not going to go there.
Well, in the same vein, Buddy Carter says that the deepening of the port of Savannah could be in danger because of the shutdown if Trump declares a state of emergency and just pulls money to build his wall.
I guess my question would be, what happens if the deepening is delayed? Are we going to die?
Probably.
Okay. Well, then I understand his concern.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a catastrophe.
Right.
This is a really good time to remind everyone.
Probably move further inland.
Yeah, I was about to make a joke about Statesboro getting hit with like tidal wave, but after the damage to South Georgia, I thought it would be distasteful.
Oh God!
It's never stopped me before. I know.
Right.
These are our opinions, and not those of all in Georgia. If you like your opinions, you can go back and listen to other episodes of our podcast. You can also, please go all the way to the right on the stars. If it's 4 stars or 5 stars, and like us, and be sure to subscribe. Yeah, keep listening to me stumble over words. Subscribe to the podcast.
All the stars.
All the stars. We want all of them.
Yes. So, dun dun dun.
Getting into the main topic. Clutch your wallets. Clutch your purse. The legislature is in session.
Ugh.
Oh God, it's
awful.
I have a good day. I'm just having like real life good days. Walking down the street, and I open up my phone, Facebook. Jessica posted something. I'm like, oh my God, what the hell? What are they doing? And it's just story after story of what, as of the recording of this episode, one day in the legislative session that they've decided they've accomplished. And I put air quotes around accomplished for the people of this state.
So you're not supposed to hate people, but I think you can hate bodies of people. So I hate the legislature because, I mean, it's unreal. We were talking about it before the show. There's simply not enough time to talk about it all. That's how bad it is on week 1.
Yeah.
Day 1.
Absolutely. In response to the David Schaefer sexual harassment accusation, which we can all agree that 7 years after and coming to the end of a run for higher office probably is not the best time to, not the best time. It is a disingenuous time to make an accusation.
Absolutely.
Now, the Georgia Senate has passed a rule, and this is day 1.
The first thing they did.
They've been stewing on this for a while, on how to protect themselves from sexual harassment. Now, Jessica, sweetie, what is in this little old sexual harassment BS that they're trying to protect themselves from?
Okay, so they have rules. Like, the House has rules, the Senate has rules. They adopt them, they amend them. This is like, the idea of the rules is not a new thing. But what they did is they amended the ethics complaints, which ethics generally deal with sexual harassment and poor behavior of staffers and elected officials in the Senate. And what they did was they limited an accuser's ability to bring misconduct claims against senators and allow members of their staff to be capped at 2 years for filing a complaint. They so they have an investigative committee. Like David Schaefer, his complaint, or the complaint against him, was investigated by fellow senators, which is an odd concept anyway, but I'll roll with it. So they have an investigative committee that's appointed, and if they find them to be frivolous complaints, they can fine whoever the complainant is, even if the complainant isn't a senator. They're not allowed to investigate a complaint if the accused party is currently running for elected office, and they have to wait until the election results are certified, which just screams like, what the hell? And then, although as much as I don't like it, I will say that the State Ethics Commission for like campaign contribution complaints and things like that, they don't allow certain complaints within a certain time period. It's not while running for office, but it's a certain number, I think 60 or 90 days before an election. So I guess I kind of get that. But they changed the burden of proof from reasonable grounds to substantial credible evidence, whatever that means. That's not even a legal term. And they ruled, and they also added that private letters of admonition will not be considered discipline. So they'll send you a letter and tell you can't do something or that you were wrong to do something, but that's not technically discipline. And then my favorite, an accuser must keep the accusation confidential or the complaint will be dismissed and they could face sanctions.
And that's the one that makes my eye twitch.
Is that all?
Well, no, but when I read that is, you're going to make your complaint to us. We're going to tell you when you can do it. And if you go to the press, if you use your First Amendment right to let the people of the state of Georgia know what's going on or what your accusation is, we're going to fine you.
Right.
I don't,
and we're going to dismiss your complaint.
I don't know how that doesn't violate. I mean, it violates,
everything?
Yeah, basic human decency. Now, look, I make fun of the Me Too movement because it is deserving of lampooning. And when we find these cases, and we went into this with the men's rights things, with the Duke rape case and things like that, is there should be a penalty to false accusations and things like that. But the Senate is giving a statute of limitation of 2 years when Joe and Jane off the street have how long? 3 decades?
Yeah, so we're going to be bouncing all over the place with this topic. There's no way to keep it. Like, there's no way to keep it in a box. But to your question, yes, the citizens, or the Senate and the House, and it was signed by Governor Deal, passed the Hidden Predator Act, which allowed for a look-back period of 2 years. Like, as soon as it was passed, they gave anyone who was abused in several decades the ability to come forward in a 2-year period, no matter how long ago it happened, and sue for civil damages. And then they've continuously amended the law and tried to offer a greater window. So, Joe Blow off the street, or someone who could maybe run for office one day, can be sued at any time for things that could have happened to someone as a child. But our beloved elected officials only have a 2-year look back period for anything, no matter what it is. But you touched on the Me Too movement, and like, so much has happened since this first passed on Monday, but I have a huge problem with the way that the senators, the female senators specifically, have been handling this. They went to the well and started condemning, which we're going to talk about, Renee Unterman losing her chairmanship and everything, but they're talking about how they're survivors of sexual harassment. First of all, that's a slap in the face to anyone who's been sexually assaulted. If you are sexually harassed versus being sexually assaulted, those are two entirely different things. It's not hard to survive sexual harassment. I don't care if that offends someone. Those are words, not actions. Give me a break.
Yeah, absolutely. And the threshold for sexual harassment is so low.
Right.
Look, harass me all you want. Lay a hand on me, we have problems. And you're absolutely right. Is when you throw things around like that, when you take words like survivor, you cheapen it when you apply it to sexual harassment. And I know I'm a guy saying it, and I'm by definition I'm an oppressor.
But it's true. Sexual harassment is terrible. Like, I've written about this extensively. I have strong opinions about it. Again, we could spend a whole episode on it. But it's not okay. But it doesn't warrant the term survivor. And talking about, being a man, it passed on party lines pretty much. And Renee Unterman was the only Republican to vote no. It passed 33-21.
And good for her. And I said last episode, we're gonna call balls and strikes regardless of friend or foe. Great vote, Renee. And
you're right. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Great vote. You were absolutely right. That was the right vote to cast. It was a fair vote cast, and this piece of, I won't say legislation, this rule change is nothing but an incumbent protection.
Right. However, true to Renee Unterman fashion, she cheapened her own vote the very next day, on Tuesday, because when she was stripped of her Health and Human Services Committee chairmanship and transferred to Science and Technology because she's ever so qualified for that, she went to the well and announced that she'd been sexually harassed in the last few weeks. Though she's been in politics for 29 years and she's never been sexually harassed, but in the last few weeks she had been, and so that's why she voted no. Well, it's a tough sell to make that announcement the day you lose your chairmanship. You should, if you're a senator and you have the voice that you have, you should make that announcement the day that it happens.
Wait, she get moved to Science and Technology?
She did.
Isn't that where the former House District 19 rep was on the House side?
I think so.
Because I remember reading that and shaking my head going, what the hell does she know about that?
Yes, my hope is that Renee will be the test, I guess, person for Spaceport Camden.
Well, and look, here's the thing, is you're right. She cheapened her vote. She cheapened the point. After 20-something years in politics, she was never sexually harassed until the last 2 weeks. Man.
Never harassed under the Kegel regime? Really?
Well, it's not even that. She is old enough to remember that a lot of that stuff was just office banter 30 years ago, and now people are getting offended. So, man, unless she's talking about me, and she could be talking about me, because I've said some stuff. If anybody's played this show for her, maybe I'm the harasser.
I just have a hard time. First of all, if you're going to make claims about sexual harassment, you should define what it is and what happened to you. Like, you don't. If she doesn't want to name the names, I feel like she should, because of the elected office and the position and everything, and the vote that she made the day before. But if you're going to make claims of sexual harassment and expect people to believe you, tell us what happened. Tell us what sexual harassment means and why you're claiming it.
They haven't been in session for 2 weeks.
No, they haven't.
So, I don't know. I don't believe her, because she does have an on-again, off-again relationship with the truth. And I know every victim has a right to be believed, but you're right. You say what happened. You don't say I was a victim of sexual harassment, but I don't want to go into it.
Yeah, and you don't say it the hours after you lose your chairmanship.
Could it be you're a crappy state senator and you hitched your wagon to the wrong guy when he was lieutenant governor?
And now you're paying for it?
Yeah, and like I said before, you've been on fire the last few days. And you kind of discuss this on your page, and folks should be following you, because, if I shouldn't be the only one angry. But you cover this very well, is these female senators standing up and saying that there aren't enough females in leadership and we should have more seats. It makes them into a protected class, assuming that a woman can't earn her place.
Oh yes, I love this. This is so rich. Like, Renee Unterman was one of 2 committee chairs last year. They have more this year, but she was one of 2 in the Senate last year. And she has worked to hurt other women in politics in both chambers and outside in lobbyists and everything else. She's hurt women, she's hurt mothers, she's hurt children. She's done all kinds of things to suppress women, and she gets a lateral move to another committee, and suddenly she's the champion of the Me Too and women's rights movement. Give me a break. Give me a break.
You don't get to a position of power like that and get to play victim. I'm sorry. If it's so horrible there, don't run for re-election.
Right.
go do whatever it is that you did before to make money. I don't know. Go work as a greeter at Walmart. Do whatever it is that... If politics is just so ugly and so dirty that they treat you so horribly and they sexually go somewhere else, just leave. I don't know.
I'm loving the crow she's having to eat over Kemp, though, because, she was, not only was she with Cagle, she also was the one behind the attacks on Kemp for the massage parlor and the sexual harassment claims and all of that. She launched that entire thing. She wanted, I forget what she did, but she penned a letter for an investigation into him and all kinds of things. And while she was dealing with this in the Senate on Monday and Tuesday, on Monday, Kemp signed an executive order in the executive branch overhauling their sexual harassment policy in the opposite direction to protect people in agencies and in the governor's office. So, it's just rich. I love it. I don't love that she was sexually harassed or anything like that, but allegedly. But the fact that the guy she hated and tried to take down came out on top of this is just glorious.
No, and what Kemp did was huge. Before his executive order, every department was in charge of handling their own sexual harassment stuff. So if it was in the GBI would handle it. If it was within the Office of Secretary of State, that they would handle it. It is now going to the Inspector General.
Which is huge.
Light years of difference. No longer can a political appointee cover his department.
Right. You make the complaint directly to the Inspector General, too. Or if you'd like. You can make it to a department head who has to transfer it. But, there is a process in place now.
Yeah, that's leadership. And that's a guy who has, 3 daughters. That's a guy who is moving forward towards transparency. And look, by the time we do our next show, by the time 49 comes out, he will do something to piss us off, and we'll call him on that. But he had a really good first day, and what he did was absolutely right. And I don't care if it's sexual harassment, I don't care if it's workplace violence, I don't care what impropriety is going on. The political appointee department head should not be in charge of investigating his own people.
And it was a campaign promise, and he kept it. He went from the inauguration to the desk and signed it, and I commend him for that, for sure.
Absolutely, and we're framing this in the whole sexual harassment thing with the Senate, but it's anything. It is any whistleblower. They no longer have to report to their superior. They go to the Inspector General and say, "Hey, this isn't right. There's something going on here that's not right." Something, and hand it off. That's absolutely commendable, and that's how that's what the executive is supposed to do.
Right. Absolutely. Before we move on, I do want to bring up one ironic thing. If Renee Unterman does name who she was sexually harassed by, let's just say she names Jeff Duncan, because I'm trying to figure out who in the Senate, who she really at odds with, because everyone else has been there. She's had problems with them for years, whatever. If it is Jeff Duncan, it sure is going to be ironic. If it's not just him, but if she claims it's him. Because Jeff Duncan and his billionaire backer who helped fund his campaign and the PAC behind him spent so much time and money attacking David Schaefer for sexual harassment claims that were unfounded and were investigated by the Senate and this, that, and the other. And Schaefer, when he was investigated, begged the committee to release the report to the public because the reports that the committees come up with are shielded under open records laws and don't have to be released. And he begged them to, and they wouldn't. And now Jeff Duncan is overseeing a body who's made it worse, and he used all of these things against Schaefer in the campaign, and it very well could come back to hurt him. And I didn't vote for Jeff Duncan, so I'm gonna bask in that a little bit if that happens.
I'm not even speculate on it. I know he could throw the ball really hard.
Shout to that camera.
You know, I know I'm beating the dead horse here, and I'm preaching to the choir, but don't come out with vague claims. Say who it is, what was done, and have the courage of your convictions. If you were sexually harassed, you know, and you say you're a leader, stand up and lead.
And there are women who choose not to report sexual harassment for a number of reasons. I mean, I wouldn't say that it was harassment, but there have been incidents that happened to me when I was at the Capitol or something, and I chose not to make a big deal out of it, to just, you know, distance myself from the situation, and with the knowledge that if I chose not to say anything about it, then I could probably never say anything about it, and I had to deal with that. Had I gone the opposite direction, it would have been upon me to articulate everything and stand behind those claims, and she's doing neither of those.
Right.
And that's hard to respect.
Here's the thing, and I know this happens, is especially if you're not the elected official, if you're a lobbyist, if you're a journalist, you know, often in your case or anything else, is you are going to sacrifice your access to all of the elected officials if you do it. And it's a horrible spot to be put into. That doesn't apply to the situation we're talking about. But it is a decision that you make, is I'm going to, you know, I'm going to move forward with the career versus, you know, this is a career ender. And again, it's a crappy choice to be stuck with, but it's a choice. Now, assault is something totally different. You know, assault needs to be reported every time, because someone who is a predator doesn't stop being a predator because you move away from them. You know, those SOBs need to get thrown in jail and get to have a little bit of a sexual assault of their own. Sorry, I mean, you hit the nail on the head when you say there's a difference between sexual harassment, which is, you know, words, the same stuff that your mother told you would never hurt you, and laying your hand on someone.
Well, I guess I can't be that blunt, or because, you know, harassment can be a touch on the back that lasts too long, or a touch on the leg, and I wouldn't say that someone doing one of those things is guilty of assault by any means. But I mean, people know the difference between harassment and assault. Like, they are distinct.
Well, it also, some people are just naturally creepy.
Right.
Like, I knew a guy in the Army that got nailed, like 2 of them, and he didn't say anything different from anybody else. He was just naturally creepy.
Bless his heart.
It's like, you don't understand. Like, other people could say that. Well, I said the same thing everybody else did. Yeah, but you're creepy.
It's a tough place to be in life.
It really is. I got a friend who can say anything to anybody. It's the worst things in the world. People love him for it. It just, you know, Saturday Night Live did a thing with Tom Brady, and they were making fun of sexual harassment films, and it was an old black and white GE film, and it was him and Fred Armisen, what to do, what not to do, and it came down to be attractive and don't be unattractive. So no matter what Tom Brady did was totally cool. Fred Armisen said hi and said they were calling HR.
That reminds me of Paris Hilton's shirt that said, "Stop being poor."
Well,
oh gosh.
As for talking about screwing people, the taxpayers are being asked to give Georgia lawmakers a 72% pay raise.
Ugh.
From $17,000 annually. Now, keep in mind, that has nothing. The $17,000 is only base salary, not what they get paid per diem for doing study committees and everything else, and not what they fleece donors for. To $29,900. I know I'm an a-hole. To $29,900. Now, this is, keep in mind, folks, this job is 3 months.
40 legislative days.
And everything they do outside of those 40 days, they're compensated for separately, as Stacey Abrams and her per diem stuff.
And it's people I can't stand when people do this. Oh, well, they have to live away from home and gas and everything. Campaign laws say that you can use your campaign donations for housing, for gas, for meals, for reimbursements, for all of those things. And then they get $7,000 per year for office expenses to do things that they need to do as well. Like, they're not hurting.
And they're not paying their office staff. The office staff is, now it's shared. You'll have, especially on the House side, you'll have 3 or 4 House members that share an office staff. But when you got people in Congress who live in their office. Now, I understand that the halls of Congress are a little different than the state capitol, but you got people living on couches and cots and using the gym for showers.
As they should.
Right. Yeah. Look.
It's public service.
The first handful of presidents left office destitute because they had to pay their own secretaries. They had to pay everything they did. They paid for it themselves, and they got some meager salary. But they did it out of service.
To be fair, there was a study done in late 2017. I did a Fox 5 segment on it, on the whole study. The study was put together.
I know. Me, I'm on TV.
No, look at me. I had to research the entire report if I wanted to be on TV about it. For All on Georgia, I can skim. For Fox, I've got to read every line. But they had this report, and they put this committee together, and the committee was other lawmakers and people who were appointed by lawmakers, and they recommended a 72% raise. So you have a committee, lawmakers who say we want to raise, we need you to study it, and so they appoint lawmakers and people they want to study it, and the lawmakers say, sure, we'll give ourselves a raise. Here's 72%, which is supposed to bring them in line with like the other 49 states. Well, again, we're talking about 3 months. I mean, they say that they do stuff all year long, which that's a choice. You don't have to. You don't have to go to ribbon cuttings. You don't have to go to GOP breakfast. That's a choice. But the only reason they didn't take this up in 2018 is because it was election year. No one was going to drop this. No one. Neither side. Like, that'd be stupid.
I was shocked it didn't come out in the special session.
I was
Shocked. It didn't come out. But they got Delta their pay cut or their tax cut, but shocked it didn't come out for that one.
And this isn't just for them. I mean, they want to raise the speaker's pay, and this is all would be codified in state statute, so it can't be adjusted. And it would be they attached a constitutional amendment, which would, I guess, put it before voters. But we don't get to. We don't know what the language is, and look what happened last time. Like. That gives me no faith. But they want to make the speaker's salary $135,000 a year, Speaker Pro Tem of the House at $35,900, Speaker Pro Tem of the Senate at $35,900, and Lieutenant Governor at $135,000. And this is after they raised the governor's salary to $175,000. Like, Lord have mercy. When is enough?
Never.
True.
Well, look, you are absolutely right. They drop it on day one. I guess it was pre-filed. But drop it on day one of an off year. So they can vote for it.
And if, it was dropped by a Democrat, so they can leave it this year if they want. Or they can leave it till the end. If they want to bring it up next year, they can, depending on how things are going. I mean, there's so many options. And now that she's dropped it, it can be amended or combined into another bill. I mean, the possibilities are endless.
You're going to see this on Sign Die.
Ugh.
This is going to be a 4:00 in the morning vote in the Senate. And it will be on day 40 plus 6 hours. There's no way they're going to do this in an election cycle. I mean, there's just no way. Because as they come out of their 40-day session, they go into primary season. I can't see them doing it in 2020. I mean, 2020 is going to be a higher turnout, and if you vote yourself a raise, especially if you're throwing numbers around like 72%.
Yeah, but they wouldn't put that on a ballot.
Oh, that's not going on a ballot.
Well, it is. The constitutional amendment has to be voted on by voters to be changed, but 72%, the language would probably be like, do you want to give, your precious elected officials who volunteer their time to the state of Georgia a raise in the amount of 12,000?
It'll be, do you like puppies and rainbows and unicorns? It'll be, should the state of Georgia adjust the salaries of lawmakers to be more in line with neighboring states? Something like that. It's going to be worded in such a way that we're in competition with the other states, they will find a Walt Whitman to write this thing up to make it sound right.
Yeah, and my suggestion on that would, if they want to go be like other states, I'm going to pull a Trump line and go to the other states. Like, this is what we can pay. This is what we feel. I would love to pay them less to do less.
Well, first of all, not one of the SOBs was drafted. They're not drafted. They asked for this. And when you say, well, I do things all year round, you talk about ribbon cuttings and stuff, that's campaigning. That's keeping your face out there. That's politicking. And I know that's very, very Southern sound, politicking. That's what it is. That's not a paid thing. That is you working for your next election, making sure your face stays out there. You're not doing me a favor by showing up a ribbon cutting.
Right.
I mean, I like to see my reps and all that stuff. And I saw the entire Paulding delegation at a gala the other night. It's nice to see them, shake hands with them, talk to them, and make fun of them. Say, I like to come down a couple days during session just to see who's picking my pocket.
Right.
And we've got a great delegation of Paulding County, and I like all, even the Democrat is a good person.
It's okay.
I know. But this is something that and Jessica, you probably know more about this than I do. I believe this goes behind closed doors, and they figure out who can vote for it, who can't. There are folks who know that they can't vote for this. It's we need this to pass. We all want it to pass because we want to double our salary. Yeah, we all want this to pass, but I can't be seen voting for this. Can you? And you figure out.
And absolutely, and not only that, but it benefits them all, so they can afford to have 20 Republicans say no, and the Democrats make up the difference in strong Democrat districts.
Right. There's a certain number who are not going to run for re-election, and they already know they're not going to run for re-election. Those are all yeses.
Right.
So we take that. I'm going to pull a number out of my butt here. 20%. We take that 20%, we lock it away. Now we need to figure out who is on strong footing, and all we need is 50% plus one. And we do the same thing in the Senate and do it all behind closed doors, and it's all theater. Now that's conspiracy, Dave.
I think that's pretty accurate.
Because I know damn well it happens on the local level when you've got county commissioners that know they have to vote against something as they work it out in executive session, then come out and do a bunch of theater.
Right.
So like I said, conspiracy Dave thinks that's what the whip does, is figure out who can vote for it.
That's exactly what the whip does. And this will be one of those things where they'll open the voting machines, people will start voting, names will start appearing, and they'll leave the voting machine open longer than they have all votes been counted or have all members voted, and they'll go around telling people, you gotta flip, you gotta do this. They'll do that. It'll be... This has been one of our most uplifting episodes.
Yeah, well, and something I mentioned in our previous episodes, where we're coming into the legislative season from a commentator standpoint. This is what we wait for every year, is meaningful local things to talk about. And as depressing as it is and infuriating as it is, people need to know what's going on down there.
Well, and this is the very premise of the title, Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong. I mean, there are so many things, and we'll probably start talking about them, like property or income tax. It's state income tax for exemption for military members and things like that, and being against school safety. Like, they're not popular things to be against, but it's the proper role of government. And so the whole premise was to tell the legislators and to teach the public why it's wrong. This is why we started this.
Yeah, and I really think and you're a member of the Fourth Estate. I'm not. I'm just a goofball that hopped on your show, got on your coattails.
Oh, please.
But calling balls and strikes, and I know how much you love sports analogies. There were some things that were done by a friend of mine who's a rep, who I'm going to call him out on, and we're going to do that coming up in other episodes. The problem is we have so much content when they're in session that every episode would be 6 hours long and nobody would listen. It'd be like Rogan, just like without talent.
Oh gosh.
Well, on that note, Jessica, do you have any closing thoughts?
I just want to make people aware of a bill that was dropped in Oregon that I saw a meme about it on Instagram, and it was so outrageous that I Googled it because I was like, surely this meme is not true. A state representative there has dropped a bill to cap magazines for guns at 5 rounds and to ration ammo to 20 rounds a month per person every 30 days. And I just want to know when people are going to rise the hell up. Like, not for the Falcons. That's not a sports thing, whatever you call it. I just don't understand. I don't understand why people put up with so much. Like, if that happened in Georgia, I will be protesting with a sandwich sign tomorrow.
Well, American Idol comes on, and we've got the Masked Singer. Yeah, that's why people don't, because they have bread and circus. And oh God. Anyway, it wasn't an argument. That was your closing thought.
That's my closing thought. Rise the hell up.
Mine is, I listened to a podcast today that was pretty good. It was yours. It actually. Now the opening music is a little cheesy because as you're talking over it, it sounds like a fifth grade movie that was trying to teach you a lesson, and there's
free. It's free.
That's what it was. Yeah, it sounds like it was one of the sample things on a Casio.
If Dr. Cool wants to sponsor my podcast, I can try to invest in some better music. But until then, it's the free crap. Did you listen to the end? Did you listen to the last music? It's This Little Light of Mine. It's even worse.
It is. But no, the subject matter was really, really good. It's something that someone who's never been in probation and not entered into the system, I didn't think much about, but the subject matter was very, very good. So anybody's out there, it's in the strike zone. Is that right? It is available on the same things you're listening to here. It's a half hour, so it's quicker. It's one subject, and it's very well researched. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. I'll work on the music. I'll start a GoFundMe. Oh my gosh.
What do you get? Like 30 seconds of a song before you have to pay for it?
I don't know. Is that the rule? I don't know.
I have no idea. It's an old DJ's joke. Like, shut it off. Any longer we have to pay for it.
That's awesome.
Well, next week we will be back with episode 49 and Matt Lowe, hopefully all tan, with number 8 on the way, most likely.
God. Lord.
For the Vacationing Matt Lowe, Jessica Szilagyi, I'm Dave Roberts. Thanks for listening.